there are two things that I should get in. It's 24 years towards this man. Every lawyer
should rules of professional conduct change to suit your location raises, I think, challenging issues. And to address those issues, we have an impressive and excellently qualified group of speakers. I'm going to ask them shortly to give a short presentation setting out their perspective on these matters, but I thought I would begin with a couple of things, arrangements first. I don't know about you, but as you will have noticed, I think it's quite warm in here. I'm not entirely sure whether that's because of anxiety about what's happening down the road at the Oval and the cricket, or whether it's because it is indeed warm here. But I just wanted to make it clear that if anybody wants to take their jackets off, they should feel free to do so. And the only request I make in return is, could you also switch off your mobile phones so that we don't have any interruptions. And the second thing I wanted to say by way of introduction was that our objective as a panel of speakers is to complete our presentations in about an hour, so allowing you to either make points to us or to ask questions of the speakers. And I hope that if you have a burning question during a speaker's presentation, you will try and reflect on that and keep it in mind for later. Obviously, if it's so critical, then we will have to see whether we should take it at that time. By way of introduction, from my perspective, I'm conscious that this question raises a number of challenges. I start from the proposition that surely the core rules of professional conduct are, or at least should be, the same everywhere in the world. By those I mean standards of integrity, confidence, primacy of the client's interests and the like. But then I start asking myself a series of questions. Maybe individual locations call for specific requirements. This may be not a very good example, but in the UK, as you will know, solicitors and barristers owe a duty to the court. Would that be an appropriate standard or requirement universally? Would the complexity of the rules that exist in countries such as the US and the UK be appropriate universally? And how should lawyers acting in different regimes respond to challenges to their professional conduct rules? And I don't know whether a number of you have seen, but one of the recent legal magazines in the UK contains an article describing the challenges that UCOS have faced in having legal representation in their battle in Russia. It's quite an interesting story of how pressure has been brought to bear and how individual firms have found it very difficult to reconcile what they would, I'm sure, regard as their primary professional conduct responsibility with the safety of their employees and their staff and so on. So I'm very glad that we can look to our panel of speakers to help us, guide us through these issues, and, for me at least, illuminate the debate. Let me start with our first speaker, Boma Eusebio, who is a partner of the Sterling Partnership. She's chair of the Women's Solicitors Group in England and Wales, and she's an accredited mediator. And she's going to give us a perspective from her experience, which includes both England and Nigeria.
I'm going to start with my conclusion, actually, which is that the core values that guide us as a profession should remain the same, and then I'll go back to tell you why. In my opinion, the key component of a dispute resolution system in any organized society is trust in the system of justice. In every civilized society, the system of justice and dispute resolution is serious business and ought to be handled with utmost caution. This is because a perceived injustice or failure to reach settlement could result in an escalation of conflict to the point where parties might decide to take the law into their own hands. And if matters were allowed to deteriorate to this level, the likely outcome could be possibly a physical fight, which could result in grievous bodily harm or death of one or more of the parties. This in turn could lead to other family members getting involved, possible vendettas, to borrow an Italian word, between families, strife between villages, counties, states, and even countries. If such situations occurred with any frequency, you will agree with me that the result would be a breakdown of law and order, or anarchy in other words. In an effort to avoid this doomsday scenario, human communities through the ages have devised ways of settling disputes to ensure that all parties accept the outcome and abide by the rulings of those presiding over their matters. The key ingredient in successful dispute resolution is trust in the system of justice, like I earlier on said. Rules of professional conduct are promulgated in order to ensure that the key ingredient is ever present in the dispensation of justice. For parties to have trust and confidence in the system, justice must not only be done, but must be seen to be done. Once this golden rule is adhered to, parties will generally retain faith in the system of administration of justice, barring the occasional bad loser for whom any outcome save the one sought is a miscarriage of justice. And for justice to be seen to be done, and to be done, the parties dispensing it must be independent, incorruptible, trustworthy, have the public interest at heart, and the interests of their clients or litigants. These basic qualities, I feel, ought to be applicable to legal practitioners, whatever their vocation, as they are desirable and necessary in achieving the key aim of inspiring and maintaining belief in the system, and could severely impede the dispensation of justice where absent. To that extent, therefore, it can be argued that rules of professional conduct should not change to suit one's location, as these principles apply wherever there is a dispute resolution system. That systems of justice and parties involved in dispute resolution lead to the capacity of advocate or arbiter should possess these qualities and be seen by society at large to possess these qualities. Clearly, there is also a place for sanctions in the judicial process, but society itself must trust in the system of justice for it to be effective. In African traditional societies, the tools employed in achieving this objective were the authority of the ruler and the authority of the gods. So the king would traditionally preside over disputes within his community, usually in consultation with his council of chiefs or elders. In pairs, or is likely to compromise or impair any of the following. And it goes on to list the attributes. This lists as independence or integrity, a person's freedom to instruct a solicitor of his or her choice, the solicitor's duty to act in the interest of the client, the good repute of the solicitor or the solicitor's profession, the solicitor's proper standard of work, and the solicitor's duty to the court. It's clear from this that the primary concern of both codes is to preserve the independence of the lawyer. Other fundamental issues of concern are the lawyer's duty to the court and to the client to act in the interest of justice at all times. Going on to solicitors in Scotland, the introduction to the revised code of conduct which governs lawyers in Scotland says that, in common with lawyers in most parts of the world, solicitors in Scotland have always been expected by the general public and by their professional colleagues and others to observe certain standards of professional conduct.
Next, we're very fortunate to have Mr. Moyer to speak to us. He's a senior partner at Scanlon & Holderness, a law firm in Harare. He has a whole range of positions he's held in the past, including Regional Deputy Secretary General of the IBA and a former President of the Law Society of Zimbabwe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do not have time to read my paper, to go through all the points raised in my paper. I assume that many of you have seen my paper in any event. I'm here to argue in support of universality as far as this topic is concerned. I'm contrasting universality from relativism, or what some of you may call relativity. But in the field of philosophical thought, it's better to use the term relativism as opposed to relativity, distinguished from the scientific term. Firstly, there can be no doubt that all rules of professional conduct are aimed at protecting the public and protecting the honor and integrity of the legal profession. They do so by ensuring that we achieve a common shared philosophical umbrella of philosophical values such as integrity, independence, and competence. I'm using these terms in the widest sense possible. If you summarize all the rules of professional conduct, including those you have seen my colleague enumerate, you see that they fall into those broad categories. They are aimed, in other words, at achieving the same purpose. They are aimed at achieving the same objective. The spirit and objective of the rules being the same, there should be no reason why they can't be harmonized, because after all, what is important is not so much the rules of professional conduct per se, but the spirit and objective of the rules of professional conduct. The spirit and objective being the same, I do not see why they can't be harmonized. In fact, I do not see why we can't achieve the objective we want to achieve using the same basic rules. The next reason I have for arguing that in favor of universalism as opposed to relativism is that despite our procedural differences and despite our different historical experiences, you will find that there are some shared common standards that we apply as lawyers. We have a similar way of dealing with issues. We understand the basic reasons behind dealing with issues in the manner that we deal with them. Because of these shared common standards, there really isn't any reason why we can't harmonize rules of professional conduct. Thirdly, it can actually be said that harmonization was in fact achieved as way back as 50 years ago. The code of conduct of the International Bar Association was agreed to about 50 years ago. All the bar associations which participated in the production of that code of conduct came up with exactly the same rules of professional conduct. Now, if they were able to do so, that in my view is proof of the fact that we can very easily harmonize rules of professional conduct without losing much. Then there is already pressure. This is the fourth reason why we can harmonize. There's already pressure from multi-jurisdictional practices to harmonize rules of professional conduct. Law firms are being established on a multi-jurisdictional basis. In-house lawyers working for multinational companies are having to advise their employers on a cross-border basis, on a multi-jurisdictional basis. Judges, state lawyers, specialist lawyers are already practicing on a multi-jurisdictional basis. Judges, for instance, are serving in various jurisdictions. I know that there are judges, for instance, from the Commonwealth, some Commonwealth countries who are going to be serving